One of the things that we all want from our mixes is for them to sound exciting and competitively exciting with other tracks. To have an energy, to have a bit of something that makes them feel like they're jumping out of the speakers at you. Whilst there are a whole bunch of different things you can do to achieve this, one of the best ones, I think, is parallel mix bus compression. It can immediately give your mix just that little boost and that little punch and that push forward that you need to kind of be competitive when listening alongside other tracks. What I want to show you today is not just parallel mix bus compression, but I want to show you how to set it up and how to think about the sound that you're getting out of the parallel mix bus compression, because it isn't just one thing. It's not just one setting, which is a set and forget. There is a whole way to think about it and a whole process to take on board. So let's dive in and let me show you what all this is about. Let me start off by playing you the track that we're going to be working on, and then we'll jump into the parallel mix bus compression. This track is some way into the mix at this point, and that's where I like to start to add parallel compression, is middle towards the end of a mix, really. Sometimes it really is right at the end of the mix, and that's because I want a fairly stable mix going into the parallel compression. So let's have a listen to the track. Okay, you get the idea. It's a little instrumental rock track. It's drums, bass and guitars. So parallel compression. Let me open up the compressor I'm going to use. Now, really for parallel compression, you've got quite a lot of choices. You don't have to use this particular one. I'm using it because it does a few things that I really like to get out of parallel compression. And I'm going to use the Blue 1176. The reasons to use this one, first of all, it has, from Universal Audio, it has a mix control, so it makes it really easy. Any compressor that has a mix control you can use for parallel compression, because that's how you can change how much signal we're blending in, and that's the entire thing with parallel compression. We set a bit of an extreme compression setup and then we blend it back in. Okay, so let me just show you some settings for parallel compression, and then we can dive in and really fine tune them, and I'll kind of explain what we're listening for and what we're trying to achieve. What I want from parallel compression is it to be blended in and sit being a tight, compact sort of ball of excitement. That's what I'm looking for from parallel compression. So I'm going to make the attack the fastest because I don't want any of the transients to pop through. I just want everything to be clamped down upon. Again, for the blending in beneath. I don't want to make the transients any sharper. I kind of want to leave those alone. And then the release, I want it to be the fastest because I want this thing to react and then get immediately out of the way. I don't want it to be too sluggish. Sometimes, depending on the material, I will slow this release down a little bit because what this has the effect of doing is cleaning up some of the aggressive distortion. As a side note, if you've never seen an 1176 before, the attack and release times are reversed to what they are on most other compressors. Most other compressors would have the fastest here and the slowest here. It's not like that. Number 7 on the attack is the fastest attack. Number 7 here is the fastest release. Okay, so I'm going to play the track, and what I'm going to do is slowly turn the input up. I'll gain match with the output so it doesn't blow our heads off, and also we can do decent comparisons with the A and B. But what I want you to listen for is the way this compressor starts to react against the track and how like gnarly and distorted it will make the track if you push it really hard. Let's just go for it. So you can hear all of that overcompressed sound, that aggressive kind of saturation that's happening in there. Now, that is the first step in how to listen to this stuff, because basically what we're looking for is some of that. Not too much. At the moment, these settings are extreme. They're way too much for this track. But that's when you're starting your parallel compression journey. Try and listen for when you're getting that character. Let's go again. And what I'm going to do is, again, just find that input point where I'm getting the character of this compressor, that distortion. Really, when I say character, what I mean is all the non-linear aspects that this compressor brings. That's distortions and saturations. That's the change of the envelope. In other words, you know, the attack and the release, how it changes the shape of the transients. So that's what I'm listening for. It's all those non-linear things. And what I want to find is a setting without using the mix bus compression yet. So without using the mix control on the parallel mix bus compression. I want to set this so I'm not using this yet. What I want to do is find my character with this compressor, and then I'm going to use my mix control to blend that into taste, and that will give us a bit more of an exciting sound. So anyway, let's go find that. I'm going to be A and Bing this throughout, so just keep an eye on this red light. When it's off, the compressor is off. When it's on, it's on. I'll always use the gain reduction so you can always see how much gain reduction I'm getting. But the important thing with this is it's got to be done by ear. You really don't look at this as any sort of guide. It's just doing a thing. But it's that kind of saturation sound that we're looking for. Okay, so this is probably about where I would set this for this track. You can see the actual needle isn't doing as much as you might imagine. It's not smashing all the way back to -10. But what you can hear, and the way to listen is, we've got some of that aggression. You can probably hear the gargling, the bubbling of that kind of saturation that's giving us that energy and excitement. When the compressor is engaged, the track just sounds more glued. If you listen to the relationship of the snare and the kick and the guitars when it's engaged, you'll hear they sort of suddenly sound like one ball of something, like one complete mixed track. But when it's open, the snare kind of separates itself from the mix a little bit. Again, it's too much. Even with these relatively kind of safe settings, it's not smashing it as much as one might do. But the whole point is we want to find that place where it's just a little bit overcooked, and then we blend it back in with the mix control. So listen as I A-B, listen to the relationship of the snare drum to the music, listen to how the snare drum settles into the mix and how everything seems to get a sense of glue and a sense of almost elongation between the parts, almost as if the parts are blending in more to each other on sort of, you know, the timeline kind of thing. Okay, let's go again. The snare drum and the guitar relationship is what this does so beautifully. Now, it's too much because what we're doing is we're crushing the track. We're crushing the life out of the track, but we like that glue. And that's where our mix control comes in really handy, because now we're going to blend it in and find the point at which we get all of the benefits and none of the negatives, pretty much. Where do I like to start with this? 50-50. This works often. Once you've done your detail with that, found the really, go really hard in, get aggressive with that saturation, bring it back, find that point where it's complementary to your track. It's important to say every track is different. So you may broadly speaking find that some kinds of tracks largely end up in the set, but most of the time it's quite different because it just depends on what you've particularly done with your levels, how you've set them, the bass content of your snare, and small changes matter. We are talking 2 or 3 decibels difference from one snare to the next makes a difference to how this is going to respond. So please don't skip this stage and just throw it on and do it, because otherwise you'll get a mucky sound and it won't sound very good. Anyway, let's go and listen back now that we've changed the mix control to 50%. And now this is going to be subtle. Okay, but this is exactly the kind of move that makes a difference between a track sounding something amateur-y about it, something a little bit too open, something a little bit too disconnected, to something that sounds kind of still quite open but also glued at the same time. Imagine that. So let's go for a listen, and I'll go in A, B and C if you can listen to the relationship. Again, relationship is the word to use because we're not making dramatic tonal changes. It's not like what we're not aiming to change the sound radically. We're aiming to make it sound like a better version of itself, but you don't know why, which is the really fun thing about mixing when you can achieve that. Anyway, without further ado, let's go for it. Especially on that middle section, the way that snare goes from being glued into the mix to just jumping out of the mix at us. I can tell you from mixing this track a little bit, that snare is one of these moments where it's either too quiet or too loud. It's one of them. You get those sorts of sounds in mixes sometimes, and the snare for this mix, it's that. Let's take a listen. That is exactly the kind of change that makes a real impact to how the whole track is presented. Now, the next question, once I've done 50-50, I ask myself whether I'm getting too much of the aggressive 1176 tone or not enough. And I'm going to try it having a little bit more. So I'm going to press that little plus button. You can see this little mix control jumps over to about 1 o'clock, 1:30 maybe. Let's have a listen to that. That is too much, because if you listen to the guitars, we'll go to that chorus, listen to the guitars and listen to how there starts to be an unpleasantness kind of on the low end of the guitars. It starts to sound like it's buffeting against something. It's aggressive. It's slightly too saturated, basically. Just have a listen and see if you can pick that out. Second I turn it off, it just cleans up and sounds nicer. So, but of course we lose the energy. That's the balance we're trying to find. So now let's just mix it at it's about 11 a.m. Let's try that. I would be tempted to go one more down. So you can see how little you need to blend in. Of course, this is to taste. Your track will do your thing, so don't think it always has to be down here. I have had mixes where there's loads of it blended in. It's kind of up almost by the plus sign. I don't think I've ever got much past the plus sign for this process, but yeah, don't just assume that it's always got to be below 50%. Listen to it for your mix. Okay, so I'm not really hearing any of the negatives on that. That's sounding pretty cool to me. Let's do the A and B and see if we've got enough of it to make that impact worth it. So what I did is, rather than click the plus and minus button, which makes it move a little notch, I just dragged it back slightly so it's just in between those 2 points. And I feel that's about where we're getting some of that energy and punch and helping that just push the mix out of the speakers slightly to get that competitiveness, to get that excitement. Let's have one more listen and see whether that is a good starting point for our parallel compression. Often this stays like this till the end of the mix. Now I'll continue to mix. Sometimes I revisit it. Sometimes I will get to the end of the mix where I've, maybe tightened up the guitars a bit more and I go, actually, we can have a little bit more of this and it can be a little bit more aggressive and I'm still not getting that unpleasant dirt. Because everything in mixing is coming back and double checking. Nothing really in mixing is set and forget. You're pretty much moving from one place to another and back again throughout mixing. You tweak something here and it affects something over here, so you tweak it there and then you go back to this thing. And parallel mix bus compression is no different. Keep tweaking, but this is how to think about it, and that's what's key. Let's listen. And that is how to think about parallel mix bus compression, how to think about setting it up. You don't have to use an 1176 if you don't have one. Just make sure you've got a fast attack, fast release, so you can really catch those transients and then get out of the way. Don't be frightened of adjusting the attack and release if you feel your track needs it, but start there. It's a great place, especially if you're new to it. It'll kind of be a safe sort of bet because you'll still get some of the gnarly kind of saturation from having a fast attack and fast release, because fast attack and fast release means that the compressor is moving so quickly that it actually, the volume changes sound like saturation to our ears. It's a little bonus of having fast attack and fast release. Try it on your mixes. Try to not go overboard, because this one is one of these ones where it's so easy to, it's sugar, it's so easy to have too much sugar, and because it tastes really good while you're mixing. And oh my God, if you've got tired ears and you use this process and you just want to turn the mix up and say, oh, it's getting more exciting and more exciting. Oh my God, it's so saturated and punishing. This is the best mix in the world. It sounds so exciting. And the following morning, of course, you listen back and it's a squashed, messy, distorted pancake and you wonder what happened. So be gentle. Try it on your mixes. use that workflow, finding out where the saturation point with your compressor is, where it's really kind of gnarly and garbled. Then pull it back, find that balance, then use your mix control to just blend in just enough so it gives you that little step forward. You're not trying to make it go leaps and bounds. Nothing in mixing is leaps and bounds. It's all little moves here and there. But this is one of the bigger step forwards than maybe one of the littler shuffle forwards, which you might have with some other processors. So if you would like to know more about mixing and engineering, please head over to my website. I've got a bunch of resources over there. It's recordwithalex.com, and I'm going to continue to update all sorts of free and paid for resources over there. I will have courses coming out, and I would love for you to go and check it out, see if there's anything that I can help you with mixing and engineering. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you on another video next week, and we'll dig into some more audio wonderfulness. Have a great week till then. Thank you for watching.